welcome to the Sports Memo Triple Double Show powered by Sports Memo. I'm your host, Ronald Cabang, also known as UCapper, and at U_Capper on Twitter. We are going to have three games to talk about today on the slate for Wednesday, December 28th. I do want to talk about some promos before we get into that slate, though. We have the $2 Tuesday cappers still live and up. Joe D'Amico, Jesse Shule, and Jeff Michaels, who will be joining us here on the Triple Double today. Those are still on sportsmemo.com, $2 Tuesday cappers. You can head over to the site after the show. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button before you go there as well. Another promo to talk about, we still do have the college football bowl access $99. That is through the college football playoffs. Again, that's college football bowl access, $99 from your favorite college football cappers there over at sportsmemo.com. With that said, let's get our boys in here. We got Moneyline Matt and Jeff Michaels in the building. I always want to, start off the show being transparent. I had a rough day yesterday. It continues to be an up and down season here for the NBA. Like I'll go a losing day, winning day, losing day, winning day. Hopefully it's a lot better for you guys. I do usually want to ask you guys, how you guys are doing as well, but we are on a time constraint today. So we're going to kind of get through this day, through the slate pretty quickly here. Let's get into our first game, Magic Pistons. Magic are 13-22 on the season. This is the second leg of back-to-back for this team here. They're coming off an outright loss to the Lakers, but prior to that, they've been really playing some good ball. I mean, they've covered in 10 straight prior to the loss last night. They also won, I believe, 8 of their last 10 games or something like that. Around there. So they are playing, they're getting healthier. It's showing on the offensive side of the ball, and that's a big reason why they've been playing so much better. On the Pistons side, they are 8-24 on the season, one of the worst teams in the league, and they lost 6 straight. They failed to cover in the last 4. They are coming off an OT game, lost to the Clippers. This is the last game of last home game of a before a pretty long road trip too. So they might want to try to close this out pretty strong. And from an injury perspective, we got Suggs, Okiki, and Isaac out for the Magic. For the Pistons, Cunningham obviously is out for the season. They got Bagley and Livers out for tonight on the injury report. Matt, let's start with you here. What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, so for this game, and real quick, I like to be transparent as well. I'm 3-5 on the week, so not a great week. Looking to bounce back here. Was 11-6 last week, and one of the plays I actually missed on last night was Paolo Banchero. So I think it's a perfect time to talk about him and the Orlando Magic. And personally, I think the Orlando Magic have more weapons at this point in time, especially with Wendell Carter Jr. starting to work his way back. The Magic are 13-22 on the season with a 7-8-1 record on the road ATS. And the Pistons are 7-9-1 ATS at home. And, you take a look at this Orlando Magic team. They lost at home to the Lakers last night. Now are traveling up to Detroit. So somewhat of a long travel destination. But I'm still backing the Magic in this spot. The Pistons do have a couple days rest after that OT loss to the Clippers here. But I personally think the Pistons lack outside shooters at this point in time. And when you face the Orlando Magic, they're so long inside, you need to be able to make outside jump shots and able to cover the spread against them. And with the Detroit Pistons right now with Bogdanovich, they hinge on him so hard that if he even has an off night, this Detroit Pistons team is going to lose. I think the Detroit Pistons have a lot of nice young talent like Jaden Ivey, Big Stu, Jalen Duren. But again, a lot of it goes with Bogdanovich, and he is the engine on that offensive side of the basketball. So I think if he has an off night, they really do struggle. And when I look at the Orlando Magic, I just see that they have more scorers at this point in time. Markelle Fultz is actually playing good basketball, maybe for the first time in his NBA career. They have Franz Wagner, who's averaging around 20 points per game. And the guy who absolutely ate against the Pistons last time is Paolo Banchero. And that's because Bogdanovich is top 10 worst defender in the NBA, and as is Saddiq Bey. So 2 guys who are going to be guarding Bogdanovich are actually statistically rated the 2 of the worst defenders throughout the entire NBA. So honestly, after the night Banchero had last night, where he had 5 fouls with like 10 minutes left to go in the third. I think he's going to bounce back here because this Pistons team really doesn't have anyone who can guard a big, powerful, small forward. So again, Panchero had 27 points, 9 rebounds, 5 assists in that last meeting. I like him to bounce back here. And because of that, and because of all the weapons that I actually believe the Magic are starting to have, they're actually getting healthy for the first time. I think Wendell Carter is someone who's very slept on for this Magic team. And I know Jonathan Isaac is out, but Ron, that's someone I even forgot about. So once he's added it back into that Magic lineup, he's a very good, solid, long defender. But in this spot, I'm definitely backing the Magic, and I also like Banchero to bounce back.
Yeah, I like that look a lot, actually. I mean, if you look at how like I mentioned, the Magic are getting healthier. They're playing really good ball right now. And if I look at the last 10 games, they're actually top 7 in both offensive and defensive rating in the last 10 games, while the Pistons are dead last in defensive rating during that same time frame. So you have one team picking up some momentum and the other kind of going the opposite direction. I mean, Detroit really they haven't even had any momentum going their way all season long. You could tell by their record there. But Jeff, what are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, just kind of to your guys' point, that 6-game losing streak for the Pistons, they allowed 5 out of 6 of those opponents to shoot 50% or better from the field. And Orlando in the last 5 games, they're putting up 116 points a game. So that's noticeably better than what they've been averaging on the season. It did stand out to me too. I thought it was kind of interesting. This is just the 3rd time since the start of 2020 that the Magic are coming into a game shooting 50% or better in consecutive games. So they shot 50% or better in the last 2 games. The only other time that happened since the beginning of 2020 was earlier this season. They did it 3 games in a row. But they're 1-1 against the spread coming off of that. So they had one game that they continued that stretch. And then after the 3rd game in a row, they lost it in the 4th. But they're 5-1-1 against the spread in the last 7 after a home loss by 15 or more. You guys mentioned it. They're coming off that loss to the Lakers. So, but one thing that did stand out to me league-wide, over the last 5 years, a road favorite that is revenging a loss to opponent that's also coming off of a home loss by double digits, 25-6. So they're hitting nearly 81% of the time. So it's looking like a lot of things are pointing towards Orlando. So I think I'm with you, Matt.
Yeah, definitely agree there. Like I mentioned, the numbers and stats are pointing in that direction. I do have the best bet on the total here, so I'll talk about that more later on the show. Next up, we got the Bucks and the Bulls here. The Bucks are 22-11 on the season. They're actually on a 3-game losing streak right now. They're coming off a Christmas Day loss to the Celtics, 118-139. That was a big loss there. This is the last game of a 5-game road trip. I feel like we've been talking about how bad they've been on the road offensively, but how good they've been on the road defensively. And that kind of has switched in the last few games here. We got to talk about that. And the Bulls here, 14-19 so far in the season. They are coming off an outright loss to the Rockets, but prior to that, they won and covered in 3 straight games. So to me, I feel like these two teams are kind of going in opposite directions here. This is their 2nd game of a 4-game homestand too, so maybe they're finally getting comfortable. They can get comfortable at home here. From an injury perspective, the Middleton continues to be out for the Bucks. Drew is on the injury report, but is listed as probable, so he should be able to go. Bulls continue to be without Lonzo Ball. Derek Jones is doubtful. Caruso and Javonte Green are both seems like true game time decisions here. This one, guys, I'm not too sure where to go from a total perspective, but the Bucks on the road, I mean, we talked about it plenty of times. Like I mentioned, they're so good defensively on the road, but then they struggle on the offensive side of the ball. In the last 5 games on the road, though, that kind of flipped here. They're 1-4 straight up, 1-4 ATS, and 4-1 to the over in their last 5 road games. They've allowed 126.4 points per game in those 5 games. Their defense is starting to struggle on the road. It could be a lot of that travel, a lot of the fatigue. What are your guys' thoughts on this one, Jeff? Let's start with you here.
With what you kind of just said too, pointing in the recent direction of both of these teams, I think I could be looking at the over, and surprisingly more for the fact of the lack of defense coming from both these teams, like you mentioned. Not something I would have anticipated at the beginning of the year talking about Milwaukee's lack of defense, but
Mhm.
it did stand out to me that the last 3 games that Milwaukee has lost in a row, they were a dog in all 3 of those games against Cleveland, Brooklyn, and Boston, excuse me, and they lost by a combined 47 points in those games. So they lost by over 15 points per game. And that 3-game winning streak that Chicago was on prior to their loss against Houston, they were actually a dog in all 3 of those games too. So they won those 3 games as outright upsets. But Milwaukee does have the edge between the 2 teams. They've won and covered 5 out of the last 6 against Chicago. But like you mentioned, I think I'm looking at the over because Chicago's defense in the last 5 games overall, they're allowing 122 points per game. And their defense actually hasn't played that well at home. They're just 6-9 against the spread, but that's
Mhm.
mainly because their defense is getting outscored on their home court too. So, I think this is more of a situational spot. And if these 2 teams meet again, I may not be looking towards the over as confidently, but I think I am leaning towards the over in this one tonight with the situation we're in between these 2 teams.
Yeah, that's a good point because I didn't even notice how bad their Chicago's defense has been playing. I looked at the last 10 games here, and they're pretty much in the bottom 3 in defensive rating in the league. And I don't know how I missed that, but that's a good point and call out by you. Matt, what are your thoughts on this one here?
Yeah, so this is a game I'm actually very much looking forward to tonight. I think it's kind of a perfect storm for a couple point props and maybe even a potential money line or spread pick. And with this game, I'd be back in the Milwaukee Bucks. That's really the only place I can look here. And a lot of it does have to do with the Chicago Bulls and how terrible they've been defensively. The Bucks are currently 22-11 on the season, have lost 3 games in a row, and are heading into Chicago. And once again, I think this is a spot where the Bucks are actually licking their chops, and no one more than Giannis Antetokounmpo. In 2022, Giannis has gone for 30 plus points in 3 out of 5 games against the Chicago Bulls. And with the Bucks being shorthanded, I expect him to get even more volume going into this spot. And I think it is a prime spot. They're going to be without Chris Middleton. If they're without Drew Holiday as well, that usage is going to absolutely go through the roof. And as for the Chicago Bulls, they're one of the worst teams in the entire NBA at guarding the paint. They have no paint protection whatsoever. Nikola Vucevic is one of the worst in the paint throughout the league. He's nice offensively at times, but he can't stop anyone in that paint, especially Giannis. And as for the Bulls, they're coming off a loss to the Houston Rockets, are now 14-19 on the season. And it's just a Bulls team where I simply can't put any faith in or back really in any spot at this point in time. And I also think it's just one of those spots where when you've lost 3 games in a row and you have players like, say, a Giannis Antetokounmpo or a Kevin Durant or even a John Morant or someone like that, I think these stars get up for these games when you've lost 3 games in a row, and it's somewhat like a must-win situation. Like, you don't want to lose 4 games in a row going back home. You'd like to get that win first, then head back home and try and get on a run once again. So because of that, I just think it's a spot Giannis will not let this team lose, and I'd be backing them here. And another spot that I'm looking here is DeMar DeRozan over 24.5 points. Last time these two teams played, DeRozan had 36 points, 8 assists, and 4 rebounds. And he's also hit this number in 4 out of 5 games. And if you know DeMar DeRozan, he's a very streaky player. When he starts hitting his props, he tends to go on a run and continues to hit those props. When he's not hitting it, he tends to kind of do that for a couple games as well. So I think this is a very good spot for DeMar DeRozan. And not going to lie, with Giannis Antetokounmpo, his line is at 31.5 or 32.5, depending on the books. I think the 35 plus is very much in play at plus 130. I think the 40 plus is very much in play at plus 350. You got to understand, when these star players see people going off throughout the league, like what Luka Doncic did last night with the 60-point, 20 rebound, 10 assist game, he's going to see that and he's going to want to go off. You saw what Joel Embiid did against the Wizards. So I think this is very much a Giannis Antetokounmpo spot, and I'm probably going to be sprinkling a little bit on that 40 plus, 35 plus as well. But again, I'm back in the Bucks here.
That's a good point. So a lot of the good points that you brought up there, I was actually looking towards the other side. Like I mentioned earlier, I feel like both teams are going in opposite directions here. The Bulls are 10-3-1 against the spread as conference dogs this season. And if you add, if we're looking at like higher totals greater than 222, they are 6-2 straight up, 8-0 against the spread in that spot. They're averaging 118 per game, allowing 111 and a half per game. So they're winning by pretty good margin as dogs in these conference games. It seems like they play up to their opponents and they know which games are important to them. But overall in the season, they haven't been doing too well. So for me, this is sort of like a mixed bag. A lot of trends canceling each other out. Analytics kind of going the opposite directions. This one that was just a tough one for me. I think I'm gonna probably stay away from it overall. For the most part, I like the angles that you guys brought and made me think a little bit more because I was leaning in certain directions, but you guys kind of brought up great points to point in the other side. So overall, I'm probably gonna stay away from this one here. All right, so let's go to the last game here. I really want to get your guys' opinion on this one because I have some cross narratives as well on this game here. Nuggets and the Kings, they just played each other last night. The Nuggets came from behind, got the dub. This one hurt. This was one of my clients' plays last night. I had the Kings, and the Kings, gave up that lead. They had a halftime, a nice halftime lead, and gave that up. The Nuggets, they're now, after yesterday, 22-11 on the season. They've won 5 straight, 8 of their last 9 as well. 5 of their last 6 games have gone under, and it's primarily due to their defense. They really picked it up defensively. That one game that did go over in the last 6 games went over due to overtime. So even in regulation, it would have stayed under. On the Kings side, 17-15 on the season. They're now on a 2-game losing streak after last night. This is their 5th game of a 6-game homestand. They're looking for quick revenge here. And one thing, I'll talk about injuries first, but injuries, Jeff Green is out. Bruce Brown and Aaron Gordon are both questionable. It will be interesting to see if Jamal Murray plays on the second of back-to-back nights, but he's not on the injury report. But we know with injury reports, we just you can't predict these things. So we'll see if he actually plays tonight. Sabonis did not play yesterday. And that lack of depth without him really hurt them to close out that game last night. So we'll see if he plays tonight. What I wanted to bring up was, and Jeff, maybe you might have looked at this, but in quick revenge games, when teams play each other in back-to-back nights, I wanted to see what happens if the team loses. One of the teams loses, do they come back and win the next game? So this season, after losing the first matchup in back-to-back matchups between two teams, the team that lost is actually just 8-17 straight up, 7-17-1 ATS against the spread this season. That means the team that lost the first game and didn't cover that first game, they're typically not covering or winning in the second game. That's something that was interesting to me because last season, I think that was a spot that was actually pretty profitable for the most part. And then when I look at the King side here, and I look at the way that they come back in games where they lost to a specific team earlier on in the season. So in season revenge, they're actually 3-1 straight up, 4-0 against the spread, and also 4-2 ATS as home dogs this season, including that loss yesterday. Jeff, I want to go to you first because I know you're more of a SDQL guy. What do you think about that when it goes from a league-wide trend that points in one direction versus a team trend going in the opposite direction? How do you balance that, and which way do you go, or do you just completely walk away from that game?
It's funny because I didn't look up exactly what you looked up. I didn't look up the immediate revenge, the next game, and I looked it up on a team level. So I looked up Denver, and I looked up beating an opponent and playing that same opponent again in the next 7 days. So playing them within a week.
Yeah.
Denver is 2-7 against the spread. Sacramento's 3-0 in that same situation, coming off of a loss. So, I do think, in my opinion, that team trends are a little better. I don't want to say better. That's not the right word I'm looking for. But, they have a little more to base it off of because you got a bunch of different situations in a league-wide trend. I do love my league. They work. They're beneficial. But I do think a team trend gives you a little more of a definitive angle. So if you do have opposing ones, it doesn't completely take it away from, it doesn't wipe the game off my board. I actually probably find myself looking towards the team trend a little more than the league-wide angle in that specific situation.
Gotcha. Hey, well, go while you're at it, just go ahead and go into your breakdown for this game as well.
Yeah, this one was an interesting one because I don't think this was the only spot that there were, multiple things kind of pointing against each other almost. But one other thing that did stand out to me is Denver, after shooting 47% or better in 3 straight games, they're 6-17 against the spread in the last 2 years. Sacramento, on the other side of that, after allowing 47% or better in 4 straight games, they're 13-3 against the spread. So their defense, Sacramento's defense, just hasn't gotten the job done in the last couple games. Denver's offense has, but it's not very often that you see a situation like that you're going off the exact same number. And it looks like both of them are almost due to end at this point. So, Sacramento actually does have the edge in this series too. Denver has probably been the better team over the last couple of years. But Sacramento is 5-3 against the spread when playing this Denver team in the last 3 years, and they've covered 2 out of the last 3 meetings. Last night was the first one that Denver won in the recent meetings. But I do seem to find myself leading towards Sacramento in this one, in this bounce back situation. Especially if Sabonis plays, because I do think that puts a little bit. I think that's a situation that puts a little bit of an asterisk on those trends. Because of those injuries, you don't exactly see that they were without one of their star players, without one of the depth pieces in last night's game. So if he does come back in this game, I think it does give him an extra advantage, especially playing with that revenge aspect from last night. So I would be leaning Kings, but I think this is one that I'm probably holding off until the injury report, gives an official ruling on Sabonis.
Yeah, I mean, I like the points that you're mentioning here because like I said, I liked the Kings yesterday. I played them. They ended up losing. I kind of want to go back to them here. It was just surprising to see how teams have done in that spot so far this season, going in the opposite direction. So, Matt, what are your thoughts on this game here?
Yeah, so as you guys know, I kind of play more situations and stuff like that. So I'm very happy to hear the SDQL stuff checks out for this one. I definitely do that as well, but you guys are the best at it. But for this one, I'm with the Kings as well. And honestly, I'm foregoing the spread, and I would be Kings money line here. And a lot of it is because of what I saw last night. I watched that whole game. It was a great game. But I think this is a spot where it's for the Sacramento Kings, and I think it's very tough to beat a team twice in their house. And if you watched the end of that game last night, it was pretty chippy. So I think the Kings are kind of licking their chops to get back in here in the back-to-back and to play the Nuggets once again. And, this is a spot where Domantas Sabonis might not play once again. And I do definitely think that's somewhat of a hole. And last night, it was an issue because they kept doubling Jokic, and Jokic was finding open shooters in Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray. And I expect a different game plan coming into this match, and because of that, I favor the Kings once again. And when looking at this too, Michael Porter Jr. went out and had 30 points. Jamal Murray was hitting crazy fadeaway 3-pointers on top of that. And sometimes a team is just making their shots all night, and it's really tough to come back. And I think that's all it was last night. Michael Porter Jr. doesn't often go out and get 30-point games twice in a row or 3 times in a row, anything like that. He's a very kind of up and down player. Jamal Murray's somewhat the same thing. So because of that, I really do like the look of the Kings tonight. The Nuggets are still a team that somewhat struggle on the road. We're going 7-11 against the spread, and the Kings are 9-7 against the spread at home. And, with those two numbers, you're kind of just running the statistics here. On top of that, with the Nuggets, if they go out and cover the spread in the first one against the Kings, I'm going to take them to miss it on their second, because I think the Kings are going to get up for this game. De'Aaron Fox was playing pretty good basketball last night. Kevin Huerter, Malik Monk. So those are the guys that I'm kind of looking to step up in this matchup. And even if Sabonis doesn't play, I'd still back the Kings. If he does play, I'd back him that much more, because he is such a factor and he can do so many different things on the court. But once again, I would forego the spread here, and I'd actually back the Kings at plus 130.
Yeah, and just real quick, I was looking at some notes here on that game, and I believe it is Murray leaning towards maybe sitting this game. So if you like it, I would think that if he sits, the line would move a little bit more. So it's a good point that you take the money line there, especially now if you like him already, regardless of who's playing.
Yeah, and one thing real quick to branch off of real quick. If Jamal Murray does sit, I definitely like the look of Bones Highland. Bones Highland played like trash last night. I think he shot 2 for 9. And he's definitely one of those guys where if he misses that one game and shoots 2 for 9, I'm going to take him the next game. Kind of like Terry Rozier, when he shot like 0 for 11. Oh my God, it was brutal. But I actually backed him last night just because he's one of those guys where if he goes off and has a terrible matchup, he's generally going to bounce back the next game. And I think Bones Highland is one of those guys who's in the same exact category.
No, that makes a lot of sense there. So I think we're all leaning towards the Kings there. Another thing that supports the Kings is also the fact that the Nuggets have struggled as road favorites this season. They're only 4-8 ATS there, and I already mentioned a lot of the stats that kind of back the Kings earlier. It was just really, like I said, really interesting to me that teams that play back-to-back games versus each other and they play in the same site. The team that lost the first game typically, or I mean not typically, but have been losing the second game as well. That was just something that I didn't expect to see when I was doing my research last night. All right, well, 3 games down, I think we did a really great job, putting this together. I think we did a good job breaking down these games for tonight. I know there's a few more games that were a lot of people liked on the board. There's the Lakers Heat game. There's the Jazz Golden State game. But like I said, triple double. We talk about 3 games here. We try to focus really hard on these games and give as much good information as possible and try to cash these tickets. With that said, it is time for the best bets section. Jeff, let's start with you here. What is your best bet for today's show? And what do you got going on the premium side here?
Yeah, I'm still $2 Tuesday, guys, up and going. And I got one of my biggest college football packs going of the year. Not one, but 10% college football bowl plays is up for sale. One's going at the end of this week. One goes next week. So grab that, get them both in the same deal before the first one goes. But for my best bet, guys, I'm going to touch on one of those other games that Ron just mentioned. I'm looking for Golden State taking the points against Utah in this one. Golden State could be without Klay Thompson, but I'm actually not too concerned about that. They're 3-3 against the spread in their last 6 games without Klay, so they're keeping them right there. And you've got a Utah defense. This is similar to what we were talking about with Chicago and Milwaukee earlier. You got a Utah defense that has allowed 5 straight opponents to shoot over 50%. Golden State still has weapons on this team, and they definitely have the edge against Utah in the recent years. They're 6-3, both straight up and against the spread in the last 3 years, but they've won all 5 games that they've played on their home court, and they've covered 4 out of 5 of them. Utah coming off a bad loss against San Antonio in their last game, and the trends here pointing a lot towards Golden State because 9-22 for Utah off a road loss in the last 2 years. And how about just 2-11 against the spread when that loss was as a favorite? And Golden State lost the last meeting between these two teams, so they have revenge on their mind. And especially playing at their home field, they've gotten the job done in that, or home court, gotten the job done in that situation. They're 14-3 at home, revenging a same season loss. And they've already covered 12 out of their 16 home games this year, and they're putting up nearly 120 points at home. So I do think they have enough weapons to back that up, especially against the Utah defense that has been struggling. So give me Golden State, especially getting 4 on their home court.
Nice look there. Just real quick, shout out to the chat there. Sorry, Ninja, we are on a hard stop here. Usually we do answer the questions in the chat here, but we want to make sure we get done in time to get to another show here. Like for me, I'm gonna go next here. Like I mentioned earlier, the Magic are playing really good ball right now, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and that's why my best bet today is on the over in that game. Last 10 games are 7th in the league in offensive rating. From a trend perspective, they are 4-1 to the over as favorites this season, including 3-0 to the over if the total is greater than 220. In those games, the average combined score is actually 248.6 points per game. And so they're putting up a lot of points in those spots. They're also 4-1 to the over on the second leg of back-to-back games, averaging a combined 232.8 points per game. So tonight's total is actually 229 and a half, creeping up a little bit, but I still see some value there in that spot. On the Pistons side, they've been an over team so far this season, especially at home, 12-5 to the over at home. They are allowing 120.6 points per game in that spot. So this is gonna be like I would say like a nice bounce back spot for the Magic after they just put up 110 against the Lakers last night. I would take over 229 and a half, probably up to 230. Probably up to 230 would maybe be the highest I go. But for that, I would probably just bring down the unit size a little bit, but maybe up to 231 max. That's where I would probably stop it. But 229 and a half, I would probably go. I would go over. This is likely going to be a premium play as well. Hopefully we cash on this one. On the premium side, I haven't posted anything, but I do have 3 plays marked down here that I want to dive into a little bit deeper to post. But like I said earlier, this one might be a premium play. Next up, let's get Matt in the building. What is your best bet for the show? And what do you got going on the premium side?
Yes, sir. So I have 2 premium plays over on SportsMemo right now, both for the NBA slate tonight. Definitely going to be getting some NFL going as the week progresses. And yeah, sorry about the chat this time. We're just on a hard time limit. Usually we're not like that. But for my best bet tonight, this one's actually going to be a little different, and it's a guy who I don't know if a ton of people will want to back, but I'm backing him tonight. I'm really confident in it, and it's DeAndre Ayton over 31.5 points plus rebounds. And here's the thing. DeAndre Ayton has hit this number in 3 out of his last 5 matchups. And in 3 of those matchups, he's actually only seen 25 minutes, 26 minutes, and 27 minutes. We all know DeAndre Ayton can be an absolute idiot and get in foul trouble, and then he doesn't hit his props. But tonight, he's facing the Washington Wizards and will be matched up against Daniel Gafford. If you get in foul trouble against Daniel Gafford, I don't know. You're just a bum. I really can't understand that. And Kristaps Porzingis has been running the 4, so you really don't have to worry about that there. And with DeAndre Ayton matched up against Daniel Gafford, he has a huge size advantage in terms of height, and he has a huge weight advantage on top of that. So he should very easily be able to back down Daniel Gafford. And we've seen what the Washington Wizards do against centers this season. You know, just in their last matchup against Joel Embiid, yes, they ended up winning that game, but Joel Embiid had 48 points and 10 rebounds, you know? So it really does show the size mismatch. Joel Embiid, another player who like Ayton, has a mid-range jumper that he can use. And when looking at this Phoenix Suns team right now, you know, they're without Devin Booker, they're without Cam Payne, they're without Cameron Johnson, and you know, Chris Paul just isn't that guy to shoot in volume anymore. So it's really going to be DeAndre Ayton and Mikal Bridges in this matchup. All right. And then on top of that, the Washington Wizards went out, upset the 76ers at home in their last matchup. And the 76ers are a pretty inconsistent team. They generally don't do that 2 games in a row. So I do expect more missed shots from the Washington Wizards in this matchup on top of that. And then DeAndre Ayton loves playing the Washington Wizards too. In his last matchup against the Wizards, he had 30 points and 13 rebounds. And, you know, again, without Devin Booker, without Cam Payne, I see him getting 20-plus shots tonight. And if he gets 20-plus shots, I think he absolutely smashes this line. You know, we've hit the best bet 2 times in a row, looking to make it 3, and I'm backing DeAndre Ayton over 31.5 points plus rebounds tonight.
Love it. That's a spicy, spicy look there. With that said, 3 best bets there. We went through the slate. Like I said, we typically have more time to answer questions today, just not that time. We'll see you guys on Friday, same time, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard. Good luck with all your action. Until then, peace.